The results from this study identified 5 different subgroups compared to the predicted 3. The existence of these clusters challenges the underlying assumption of previous research that all children follow a uniform sequence in gaining conceptual and procedural knowledge about fractions. Instead, as was hypothesized, the data suggests there are individual differences in the way that children combine conceptual and procedural knowledge. Cluster 1 demonstrated a lower procedural knowledge. Cluster 2 demonstrated a lower conceptual knowledge. Cluster 3 demonstrated a higher procedural knowledge compared to a lower conceptual knowledge. Cluster 4 demonstrated a higher conceptual knowledge compared to lower procedural knowledge. And Cluster 5 demonstrated higher in both areas. The lower procedural cluster was not only lower than expected on procedural ability, but also did not demonstrate any above expected conceptual ability that could potentially compensate for a lack of procedural knowledge. This combination may have led to lower performance. The lower conceptual group also did poorly, but did perform slightly better, perhaps because these children might appear to have some better than expected procedural ability. The existence of this group indicates that there are indeed some children who learn procedures for solving fractions problems without having the expected level of conceptual knowledge. The higher procedural, lower conceptual group and its counterpart, higher conceptual, lower procedural group, both perform better than the first 2 groups. This would be expected as the children in these groups appeared to have either procedural or conceptual ability upon which to draw. At the same time, the higher conceptual, lower procedural group did perform significantly better than the higher procedural, lower conceptual group. This result supports the notion that conceptual approaches will be more successful than procedural approaches in supporting mathematics learning. Finally, the group that was above the mean on both procedural and conceptual residual scales, the higher cluster, was also, as hypothesized, the group that performed the best.